This was, I think, 2 or more years ago. I was enrolled in a vocational training school known as Job Corps to become a carpenter. At the time, my mother was a hardcore drug user, and I wanted desperately to make my life stable so I could fight for custody of my little sister. I was friends for a time with a really chill dude who kind of reminded me of Skeet Ulrich. For the sake of politeness, I'll refer to him as Jat. He and I would kick back and discuss silly things as pals. I would make fun of him, being a welder, referring to him as Sparkle Fairy, and he would always poke fun at me for working in a trade that involved playing with wood. And in my taste in boys, naming my boyfriend at the time, Justin. One day, Jat announced that his brother had also enrolled in Job Corps, with the desire to join Natural Resources, or NR for short. He was aiming to become a firefighter, and NR had the training he needed. I was, of course, ecstatic. After all, Jat was my best friend, and to find out that I'd get to meet and chill with his bro was the most epic thing I could think of at the time. A week later, he arrived, and Jat excitedly showed him the campus and dorms and introduced me to him. I must admit, this guy, for the sake of safety, I'll only call him Matt, kind of made me feel odd when I first shook his hand, but I brushed it off and smiled like I had won the lottery. After a month or two of fighting for his spot with the elite NR team, he made it in, and started hanging out with us daily. The three of us did everything together. Hiking, playing Magic, training, movie watching, you name it. We were all so close, and I'm so ashamed for how wrong everything went. I didn't know he was so possessive or scary, so when Justin and Jat both left for Christmas vacation, I thought nothing of being left alone with Matt. Justin and I had been fighting non-stop. I had found out that he had been cheating on me on a regular basis and was planning on hooking up with an ex while he was on vacation. I was weak, and I needed a friend, so I hung out with Matt one night after trade. We talked about his home life, and the fact that I was homeless before I had arrived. He confided in me his fears, and I told him my problems with my relationships. He sympathized with me, and even said he was almost jealous that I was with Justin. I laughed at him and told him he'd surely find another girl worth something to him, and he replied by saying he was too ugly. It was too perfect. He was self-conscious, and I was too heartbroken to think of the repercussions. I told him I thought he was handsome, and I kissed him. It was a short, stupid kiss that wasn't satisfying at all. The weird bit was that the moment my lips met his, I felt extremely sick, like someone had just kicked me in the gut. I pulled away and practically sprinted 20 feet backwards. I mumbled an apology, told him I had made a mistake, and ran back to my dorm. I called Justin shortly after, told him what I had done, and broke up with him. I saw Matt the very next day, and we hung out like normal. I figured everything was fine and we could go back as buds. 2 days after vacation ended, the stalking started. It was small at first, bumping into me in the rec center, seeing me at the gym, and even finding my little hiding spot in the woods where I went to be alone when the depression hit. He was always around before, so I didn't think anything of it at first. Then it got weird. He would wait outside of work, outside of school, figure out what trip I was going on and sign up for them, even when I didn't mention it. If I stayed in sick, he would bribe girls to let him in the dorm so he could see me. At one point, I could have sworn he had been outside my window, hours past curfew, just staring at me. I started avoiding him, ignoring when he talked in favor of a book or a suddenly fascinating leaf on a tree. I asked Jat to stop hanging with me, because I knew Matt wouldn't be far behind. I even started plotting out new and intricate ways of traveling from work to dorm so he wouldn't see me, but he always found me. Finally, after a long and awkward summer, he went on personal leave for a few medical issues. I started to relax. I started hanging out with Jat again, got into a new relationship, even started working out with NR to get into shape. Life was good again. But then winter came back, and Matt came with it. He got it into his head that I was working out with NR because I missed him and wanted to be closer to him. He would follow me to the shower areas, watch me intently when I exercised, and threaten people if I so much as laughed at their jokes. He tried to sabotage my relationship by saying my new boyfriend had been talking trash and threatening to hurt me. He started coming into my work and demanding my boss let him see me for lunch. I had started eating at the shop instead of the cafeteria because he would always sit next to me and try to kiss me, and screamed cuss words at me when I told my boss to send him away. And when I finally confronted him, telling him he was at best like an overreacting brother, he grabbed me by the arm hard and said I was confused, that I just needed to spend time with him to understand. It got so bad that the NR staff called us both into the office and demanded to know what was going on. I stayed composed. I didn't want to set off Matt and risk getting him kicked out, but as it turns out, I didn't need to. Matt lost it the moment I said everything was fine, yelling at the instructor about how I was a scathing bitch and that I deserved to go to hell for the way I've treated him. The instructor pointed out that of the two of us, I was the one acting rationally and that he wasn't helping his own case. He sent Matt out and told me to sit down. I pleaded with him, asking him not to write Matt up because he had been working so hard. I told him it was my fault for him being so angry. He silenced me by holding up his hand, and what he said next shook me to my very core. Listen, kiddo. I know I'm not your typical lost limb, PTSD-stricken vet type, so it's hard to tell. But I've been to war. I've met killers and rapists, and I can tell you right now that the look he gave you, the look he gave me, is the look of someone who wants to hurt you in the worst possible ways. I was shocked. What do you mean? I asked. I still remember the way he pinched the bridge of his nose, the way he chose his words so carefully. What I mean is, when you graduate, don't tell anyone where you're going. Don't hint at it. Don't say where your family is. Don't even mention where your crush lives, because God willing, he'd hunt them down too. I want you to stop working out with NR. I want you to stay in the dorm as much as possible, and when you leave it, he had better not know. Anytime you walk from trade, you had better be walking with coworkers. Do you understand? I could only nod. And when I got back to my dorm and let it all sink in, the only thing I could do was cry. I was convinced it was my fault. How could I have let it all go so wrong? Things kept escalating to the point of almost violence, and for the next few months, I followed these rules religiously. I even asked the girls to spread rumors that I was a lesbian to see if it would deter him. It didn't. To my relief, he graduated several months ahead of me, but despite that, even after he had left, I made no mention of where I was going when my date came up. To this day, I still fear that he may be outside my window, that he's still trying to follow me home, that he somehow found my family. I've never hated someone's name so dearly. It took 2 years to realize that it was not my fault for Matt's obsession with me, and only now am I able to post this. This happened a few months ago, on a trip I was taking to see my grandparents. They live about an hour and a half away, and I take the Natchez Trace Parkway to their house. For those who aren't familiar with it, it is a national parkway that is surrounded by woods, for lack of a better description. Along with the parkway, there are many places you can pull off and see landmarks from American history, most having to do with Native American Indians. There are no stores or gas stations along the parkway without having to exit off and drive a few miles to the nearest town. They do provide several bathrooms on the trace for travelers. For this trip, I was alone, since my husband had to work. I had left my grandparents' house, and I was about 45 minutes into my drive when I realized the large drink I had gotten at Taco Bell was a huge mistake. I had to pee, like really had to. I was on a long stretch of the trace, where the next exit was a good 20 miles ahead. Now, I was prepared to wait it out, since I was alone and didn't want to stop at the bathrooms, as usually there were other travelers stopping there to rest and use the restrooms. When I got closer to the restrooms, I decided I would pull in and look around to see if maybe no one would be there, or a large group of people would be there. My bladder felt like it was about to explode, and I really thought I might have an accident if I tried to make it to the next town. So I pull in, and immediately notice a parkway ranger parked at the restrooms along with the other vehicle. I figured since the ranger was there, I would be safe to run in and use the restroom quickly. I got out of my car and caught the ranger's eye, and he nodded his head at me, so I locked my car and went inside the restroom. I was thinking he would stay until I left the restroom, so I felt completely safe. When I got in the stall, I heard a car start up, and I thought it was the other vehicle that was sitting in the lot. I was very wrong. Not 15 seconds later, the door to the restroom opened, and someone started banging on the stall door. I was mid-pee and I had to go so bad I couldn't stop. I could see a pair of men's shoes under the stall door, and 2 very large legs. He wasn't saying anything, just banging on the door. I finished as quickly as I could, and got my pants pulled up and everything, Then I just froze. I didn't know what to do. It was obviously the ranger who had left the parking lot. This guy's banging on the stall door and not saying a word. I finally found my voice and asked what he wanted. He told me to come out of the stall. His voice sounded so calm compared to the banging. I yelled at him and told him that I had my phone with me and I was going to call 911. He just kept banging and calmly telling me to come out of the stall. I was praying the latch wouldn't break. I unfortunately, and somewhat stupidly, didn't actually have my phone with me, but I still pretended I was calling 911 and talking to a dispatcher. The man stopped banging and I heard him run out of the restroom. I waited a minute, which felt like an hour in all this, and heard his vehicle start up. So, I decided to make a run for my car. I got my keys ready, and as soon as I opened the door, I unlocked my car and ran as fast as I could and got in. I immediately locked my doors and started my car. The man was still parked in the lot, in his truck, so I grabbed my phone and called 911. They told me to wait right there while they transferred me to the Ranger's dispatch. Well, I guess the man saw me get my cell phone and realized that I hadn't actually called 911 while I was in the restroom. He jumped out of his truck and started coming towards my car. I was still waiting to talk to the other dispatcher. There was no way I was just going to sit there while this man tried to break into my car or something. So I reversed out of the lot and onto the road. The dispatcher came on the line and I was focused on driving and telling her everything that had happened and that a ranger had been there like 5 minutes earlier. She told me to hold on while she tried to find the ranger that was there, and I glanced in the rearview mirror to see that the truck started following me. I screamed into the phone to tell the dispatcher, but I guess I was on hold because she didn't come back on the line for another 30 seconds or so. When she came back, I was screaming that he was behind me and she was trying to calm me down. She said the ranger was just down the road from me and to put my flashers on so when I passed him, he would know I was the one who needed help. When I put my flashers on, the man slowed down and got further behind me. I had gone about a mile when I saw the ranger. He got behind the truck and the man just pulled over. I pulled over about 500 feet in front of him. I watched as the ranger made the man get out of his truck and handcuff him and put him in the police car. The ranger then came to talk to me and said the man said that it wasn't him and just denied everything. Luckily, the ranger recognized him since he was in the parking lot when I had pulled up. The ranger told me I could go, so I left and went home. I haven't heard what happened to the man, if anything. I have never driven on the trace by myself since, and I always make sure to use the restroom before I leave my grandparents. I still have no idea why the ranger left the parking lot. I was too shaken up when I talked to him to ask. This happened a few years ago, but I initially met a man who I'll call Saint in middle school extracurriculars. Apologies in advance for the long story. I grew up in a very boring, safe bubble of suburbia. I actively played tennis my whole life, and this is how I met Saint. It was just another middle school tennis summer camp, and I was the top girls player, while he was the top of the boys team. We practiced together fairly consistently because of this, and saw each other for a couple of years in a row in the same camp. After high school started, I didn't join the camps anymore, and lost contact with Saint. Not a big deal, because we weren't that close, and he went to a different high school. Fast forward to year 3 of college, when he adds me on Facebook. Being the naive, suburban-grown girl now attending college in another cushy, safe town, I think it's really nice of this guy to find me and reach out to me. It's a small town, so we have plenty of mutual friends, and he invites me to hang out when I'm back on winter break in a week or two. He suggests to invite a few of our mutual friends, and we'll all go see a movie and grab dinner. Seemingly normal enough, so I agree. Closer to the day of, he offers to drive me. My car was at school, and I don't like borrowing my family's cars, so I take him up on his offer. I give him my address, and he picks me up on time. Everything seems normal. Then, we get to the movies. And none of my friends are there. I ask where they are, and he makes up some excuse about how they couldn't make it. I don't remember exactly, but this is when I start feeling that things are a little weird. He pays me for my ticket, which I try to fight, but he's very adamant and seems a little irritated with my objections. At this point, I'm uncomfortable, but try to make the best of it because maybe he's just trying to be nice. We go into the theater and make small talk. but as the movie begins, he openly grabs my hand. Let me point out that at this time, I had a boyfriend, and Saint knew this. I take my hand away and ask him quietly to please not do it again. He ignores my request and grabs my hand again, not wanting to make a scene. I just leave my hand limp and try to distance myself from him in my seat. At some point, he decides this isn't good enough. He lifts the armrest that separates us and tries to lay his head in my lap, which I quickly throw my purse into. He starts adjusting my purse and snuggling into my lap, and I get incredibly uncomfortable. I try to nudge him and ask him to sit up, but he ignores me again and stays put. So I rigidly sit in place and wait the movie out. After the movie, I immediately ask for him to bring me home, and promptly apologize to him for any misunderstandings he may have had about us, and that I'm not looking for a relationship with him. He apologizes for his actions. I get home safe, and that's the end of that. The next few days, he starts calling and texting me, which I either don't pick up his calls or respond to his texts with short, succinct answers. After a day or two, the calls increase in frequency, upwards of 10 to 20 times a day, and my voicemail box fills until there isn't any more space. I start ignoring his texts as they become more frantic and desperate, asking for forgiveness and asking to stay friends. But I can't shake this slimy feeling about him in my gut. I send him a final text telling him that I don't want to be friends, and that I'd like for him to stop. He responds with another apology and that he understands. I don't remember if it was the same day or the next, but my doorbell rings when I'm home alone. My parents worked full-time, so it was normal for me to be alone all day, and being the type of family to receive packages daily, I go to answer the door. I take a quick peek through the peephole, and I freeze. I feel as though my chest is caved in and hit the floor, and my body is flooded with fear. I see Saint staring right back at me. I compose myself and walk away, quietly darting to the back of the house to close all of the doors, windows, and blinds. I grab my dog and sit quietly in the family room, because making my way upstairs at this point is impossible. There are solid 5 windows next to the front door, and another large 5 panes that view the staircase from the front lawn. The front doorbell rings another few times, more persistently, as if he knows I'm home. My phone beeps again with another voicemail. Blocking his calls simply directed him to voicemail. And this one asked me to see him, because he has a gift for me. I sit in silence for what seems like hours, and the doorbell stops ringing. I creep back to the front door and peer out to see that him and his car are gone. As soon as he's gone, I leave the house and go hang out with friends, but I don't tell anyone about what's just happened. I just want to forget all of it. But I wish I did, because he came back the next day. I'm so afraid of coming back that I close all the doors, windows, and blinds once my parents leave. This time I'm on the second floor as the doorbell rings, and I peek out to see his car there. I hear the doorbell ring again a few times before watching him stroll into my backyard and peek into the kitchen. Again, as an idiot, I just wait it out. I don't want to get the police involved, and I don't want him to get in trouble because I'd feel bad. He's a nice guy, maybe a little clingy and a little crazy. I don't know anymore, but eventually he leaves. He doesn't come back again by the time I go back to college, but I'm not sure if he ever stopped by again. He sent me a final message on Facebook asking for forgiveness, and he wants to continue being friends. By this point, I'd already unfriended him. I tell him that I'm back at school hundreds of miles away, and that I don't want to keep contact, and that I want him to stop bothering me. As always, he says he understands, and that's the last I hear of him for a while. A year or so after all of this, I hang out with one of our mutual friends that he had supposedly invited to the movie that started it all. I ask her if she was ever invited, and, unsurprisingly, she tells me she wasn't. We talk about him for a little, and she proceeds to tell me that in year 3 of college, Saint had returned home because of a mental breakdown that had caused him to wander the streets of the East Coast in the dead of winter, proclaiming that he was Saint and a messenger of God. I understand that mental instability doesn't mean that he had any intention to hurt me, but knowing this scared me. The idea that I wasn't just avoiding an old friend who really wanted to hang out, but instead somebody who may not be in a reasonable state of mind, and it made me live much more fearfully. I've since moved back to my hometown to stay close to friends and family, but have one more run-in with him as a result of this. Luckily, nothing came of it, and as far as I know, he didn't show up at my parents' house afterwards. I can't live on the first floor, out of the fear of somebody peeking into my apartment, and I rarely ever let anybody know where I live anymore.